Welcome to the Art of Blooming Life. I'm Arnaud, senior service leader with about 20 years managing people and team manager. In this podcast, we are exploring how we can bloom in our lives, professionally and personally. I'm with Paul Camage today. We know each other for quite a long time. We have been colleagues in one of our previous lives. Could you please introduce yourself, Paul?
It's actually two previous lives,
Two
Arnaud.
previous lives, that's true.
So yeah, I mean it's been a long time. So yeah, I'm Paul Camage. I've been around for at least 20 years, an engineer by trade. Now I'm a service leader, occasional journalist, writing articles on LinkedIn and doing the occasional podcast.
Wonderful. So great to have you with me today for this second episode of this podcast. The first one was about art therapy, where we were more focused on I would say, the body and what means the body, and especially the voice. Here, I would say we're going to speak about something more traditional, professional topics. And a topic that we love together with Paul is conflict, hopefully constructive conflict. We will discuss why it is essential, in our opinion, why teams avoid it, and how team members and leader can foster trust while pushing ideas forward. We'll try to explain that conflict may be a condition for professional blooming. We'll keep through all these podcasts this idea of the nice metaphor of blooming and flowers, etc. And we'll try to answer the question, can a team truly bloom without conflict? Starting with the hypothesis that blooming is growth, growth implies tension, and we don't bloom without friction as roots push through soil. So I would like to start with a nice question, Paul. Can a team really bloom if it avoids tension?
Easy answer, no. Now, I think it's important to discern what we mean by conflict. We certainly don't mean negative conflict, bullying, harassing, being generally nasty, particularly directed towards individuals or groups of people. What we're talking about here with conflict is the conflict of ideas, the way to go about things. And any team that doesn't embrace this, I love your analogy about you know a root pushing through to the soil. You will never break through into something better. The bulb, the plant breaks into the sunlight. You will stay underground. You will stay in the dark, and fundamentally, the team will not succeed without having some form of conflict.
All right, so we are really speaking here about the fact that conflict is, I would say, based on what you say, a natural topic. And in fact, you should not force to bring conflict or avoid to have conflict. It's just part of the process when we have interaction with someone or in an organization in general. Correct?
Conflict environment,
Mhm.
yes, you would see that conflict as something which happens organically,
So
where
the
ideas are challenged,
Mhm.
where viewpoints are discussed, sometimes robustly, to end up in a better place than you were before.
All right. So my second question will probably very easy to answer based on what you said. But that's again to base a foundation here on this conversation is that is conflict a sign of dysfunction or a sign of growth in an
A
organization?
sign of growth. It must always be a sign of growth. Um, the Dalai Lama once said that if you speak, you will only hear what you already know. If you listen, you may learn something. If you've got a team which is not speaking and not listening, then what are they going to learn? Nothing. But if you've got lots of speaking and lots of listening, the team will begin to learn more and therefore become more. So without tension, without that argument between ideas, it isn't going to happen.
I remember something that you used to say. I don't know if you want to say that today. Your how you use your hand when you speak about you listen and you speak. Would you like to introduce that?
I think that wasn't me. I think that was one of our other colleagues.
Okay. So the thing is that you just it's a simple one, in fact, but you have two ears, you have just one mouth, and
Yeah,
when we speak, we have to. It's again a nice analogy, but I think it's a good one to remember, especially when we speak about conflict that may bring
absolutely.
a conversation as we do today. So at the end, the idea is that if bluing is an expansion, then conflict may be part of the process. So what I would like to go now is how can conflict be an accelerator for blooming? So, and as you said, the idea is really how we can reframe constructive conflict. What is it? So, and what are the conditions? So, you may need a positive exposure, an intellectual reflection, bringing a rigid structure, you know, I think we both know the situation about Apple in the 70s, about Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak. If you want to say something about this one, maybe?
Um, so it's very well publicized that the two Steves,
Mm.
um, even though they were at times friends and other times perhaps not, argued about the direction of Apple. I mean, we all know Steve Jobs was a visionary. He preferred the aesthetics of Apple products, whereas Wozniak was more of a practical engineer type person, and neither was wrong, but they both felt that in the 70s and early 80s, when they were arguing about certain Apple products, that constructive tension between them made the product better because they had to challenge each other, and each other had to get better and better and better. So that process led Apple to be a much better organization than it was before. And I think the same goes for every team that you see. Teams that are silent when you have them together in a room or on a Zoom call or in any environment. What does that say about the team? They have nothing to say about an idea. They have no opinion. Why are they there? If all they are going to do, you're in a dictatorship. That isn't going to further the team's ideas. So, if the team is discussing its ideas, if it's challenging each other, then you are going to end up with the team coming out of it with an idea that was better than they all went into it. The English phrase we frequently use is there will be more than the sum of their parts.
Yeah. So I think what is interesting with the case of Apple is what was surprising for us when we've seen that being publicly shared. That was probably the tension because that looked very passionate, and with the impression, oh my gosh, how can those two can behave and work together? You know, that was also a nice lesson to see that this tension was there, but this tension was also really needed. So that brings me to an expression that I like a lot that we may use in this context that I would like to share to you and to bring you to some reflection. When you are a manager, you know, and you are in a situation where you have your team meeting and you need to organize some brainstorming. There are sometimes, I don't know, you may do it yourself or not, or some manager may do it. So they say, okay, so please, here is the condition of this discussion. You are in a safe place. And I would say, yeah, you smile because we probably know what it means, and maybe the people who are listening to us know what it means. It means that you are not in a safe place. So the more the more the size of the team is big, when you hear that, it's maybe a question to pay attention to what we are going to say. Jokes apart, I think it's important to have a safe place anyway. So the idea, the question would be, uh, how do you think organization can help employees to feel safe and to engage in conflict?
You're absolutely right. And if we look at this idea about safety, why don't people feel safe? Well, why would they? They are there because they're employed. They're not there to give ideas necessarily. And if the idea is going to put them in a negative view from their manager or their leadership or the company that they work for, why on earth would you feel safe? raising that idea. So it's really important that this safe space idea is respected. Now, I know we're a cynical bunch in the UK, but a survey last year said that 22% of all UK employees will always avoid conflict. So not just slightly or sometimes, but always. So that's almost a quarter of the workforce will not engage in any kind of conflict, even when they knew it was the best way to solve a problem.
So
They
that means
said
that,
that they
yeah, well, continue. Sorry, Paul.
they said that they felt uncomfortable. Now, we are known in the UK of being slightly conflict avoidance. We're different in other European countries. The nature is different, and so that's fine. But the idea is going to transcend most countries. The desire to have a harmonious workplace, not to fall out with your colleagues, your manager. And the worst one is you fear negative consequences.
Yeah.
And I think the joke is there for a reason. The joke of, oh, the second you hear this is a safe space, you know it isn't. You can't tell someone they're safe. They have to feel it. The leader, the organization needs to foster that safe space environment. They need to make sure that the safety that what happens in this room doesn't get repeated outside, isn't used against them in another environment. And it's only through that we as individuals, if you think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we're right down at the bottom here. Am I safe? And if you don't feel it, you're never going to travel up Maslow's pyramid to get to the top and start actually thinking outside the box, as the Americans would say. So this safe space is the fundamental backbone of allowing teams to be inventive and have conflict.
Yeah, so that means that in fact people may have this fear, but as you said, to take your example for the UK, is that they prefer eventually, if the conditions are not met as you meant, that they would be in some kind of fake harmony and would prefer to be in a team that stagnate instead of progressing to avoid anything wrong for themselves. So that's interesting because that means really at the end behaving against yourself. You know that there is something, but the fear of what may happen as a consequence of your thoughts may be a reason why you will be silent, and that drain obviously a lot of energy. So, what would differentiate for you? What would differentiate, sorry, conflicts nourishing growth, conflict that damage the growth? What would be the condition? Maybe you already a bit answered, but what would be the difference between really we are on the right path to again nourishing the growth? And when I say that, I say um, I would say for the group, for the organization, but also individually compared to the other one.
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what's really concerning in this is that we're frequently told bring your full self to work, and I completely agree with that idea. But if then 22, almost a quarter of people feel they can't for whatever reason, in case they cause disharmony within the workforce, that's a real worry that actually we're missing out on a quarter of the team's talents. And one assumes um, they weren't just employed in those positions without wanting what they bring to the organization. So that's a real loss of resources that we've suddenly given ourselves. The thing about safe spaces, though, it takes time. You can't just
yeah,
turn it on. You have to earn it.
yeah,
You have to demonstrate as a leader and as an organization that you are happy to have these. It was easy for Apple because there's two Steves. They owned the company. They were the company. They can just, yeah, okay, the market might say, goodness me, what's this company where the two bosses are arguing all the time? It's not the same if you are in a huge organization or this organization, where you are not in charge, you are not the person who makes these decisions, and you do feel as if you could be feared negatively. And so the role of the leader in creating this safe space is massively important. But there are also incumbent issues for you as an individual being part of a team.
Yeah, definitely. So that means at the end, every individual participating to this conversation are asked to be challenged and to make sure that they are creating the environment and not only waiting for the manager to take the decision and looking passively what the manager would bring in the conversation and without bringing that much. So that brings me to another idea to try to understand together why do we resist? Why do we avoid conflict? The third thought that I would have is that conflict means visibility. So as you said, and as I just mentioned, is as soon as you are visible, you are at the end more vulnerable because you are seen, and it creates some discomfort. So and that uncomfortable situation can be seen and felt both by the team members or the managers. So the idea of keeping an harmonious workplace may bring at the end to different outcomes that we may expect, because you may fear a negative consequence of what you may say, but at the end you would move forward individually and again for the team. So what do you think people prefer? Why do you think people prefer safety over growth?
I think it's just fear. I mean,
Just the fear.
back to Maslow, if you think about where safety is on Maslow's hierarchy of needs, it's right down the bottom. It's one of the first things that people want. All of us as human beings, and if we don't feel safe, we are not going to progress up Maslow's pyramid.
Yeah,
We're not going to develop ourselves. We're not going to put ourselves out
yeah,
there
yeah,
to promote an idea which we think might be contentious or different. We're not going to suggest something which the organization would not normally do. We are going to suggest ideas which the organization would normally do. And if we go back to our Apple idea, Apple so often took decisions which, when they originally were suggested, everyone was shocked and said, well, that will never work. Okay, well, it appears that we were all wrong because they were right. Not all the time, but frequently. That conflict clearly allowed them to take decisions which made a difference, which made them different. Um, and so you can understand why people don't do it, is that they don't want to feel unsafe, uncomfortable, visible, perhaps. And that's really important if you're not. I mean, you and I are both slightly extrovert. So we probably are a little more comfortable being the spotlight of attention for a team. Whereas if you are an introvert, if you are not somebody who feels comfortable being in the spotlight, then this is going to be a real challenge for you. This is going to be something you're going to find very, very uncomfortable, both suggesting an idea, but also just everyone listening to you.
and being judged eventually. Yeah, yeah,
Potentially being judged, particularly if somebody's then going to robustly defend or challenge you,
yeah,
which is
exactly.
necessary, but again is often uncomfortable.
Yeah, so exactly. So and we are again back on how the environment is settled down to make sure we are able to discuss. What do you think would happen to organizations that are avoiding conflict or difficult conversation? What would be the future of this kind of organization?
We've seen it time and time again where organizations stagnate because they never see what's coming. I mean, the example that's always used is Kodak.
Mm.
Kodak, you and
Yeah,
I both
yeah.
remember that they were synonymous with film, camera film.
Mm.
And yet digital cameras came out and their business almost went overnight. Now, do we honestly think that there was no one intelligent within the Kodak organization who could see the technology was changing and that digital cameras were coming in? I find it inconceivable that nobody in that organization could see. And there are lots of reasons before people write into your podcast and say, oh, Paul doesn't know what he's talking about. Correct. But I can't help feeling that if there had been a far more robust conflict discussion, then the outcome could have been different.
Yeah.
They may have decided to do something which was unusual. They may have decided to do something which on paper looked odd. Instead, we saw them do the same, and eventually there was no company.
Yeah,
And I think
exactly.
we've all seen teams that have done this. And you wrote a podcast, sorry, you wrote an article on LinkedIn a couple of weeks ago about when everything's going well, your KPIs go down, performance goes down, and this is exactly the same. When nobody is coming up with an idea that is unusual, that makes everybody in the team go, okay, and stops them in their tracks, then teams will begin to stagnate. But that will only happen if the environment is there, that they feel that they can bring an idea to the table that is going to challenge the status quo.
Yeah, so that leads me to reflect now about what the role of each other we have in an organization and how we can take those roles and some tips that we may bring to be in the right environment if you want.
Do you mean as a leader or as an individual team member?
Maybe we'll start with the leader and then we'll go through individual contributor as well. Um, uh,
I think it's
yeah.
and that's important because there's
Mm.
lots and lots of information available of what as a leader you should do to encourage conflict and constructive conflict in your team. There is less information and guidance to do if you are a team member. Really, as with anything in this environment, it's a two-way street. Um, no, I mean it's easy to say, but emotional intelligence. If there was one trait that managers need today, it's emotional intelligence. Um, if you are going to have a team which is bringing ideas to the table, which is robustly discussing them, you're probably going to have some big personalities in your team. The ability to understand them, not just physically but emotionally, is massively important. Almost the number one thing you need to understand. Um, and that's and again another idea that comes is they must be able to listen. Goodness, the number of times when and I know I've been guilty of it. I'm like most leaders, we are expected to talk. We are expected to lead. Crikey, it's in the title, lead. And it's really difficult sometimes to shut up and let somebody else lead the conversation. That's a real art that even now, after 20 something years of managing people and 20 years before that being in teams, that I still struggle with.
Yeah, because it also depends on the dynamic as you mentioned in the organization and at the end the personalities of everyone, maybe the egos because we didn't mention that yet, but that's part also of I would say the equation. For a manager, also I guess there is also this must to be ready to be wrong. And sometimes that to accept that in the room there are someone who had an idea that it's much convenient to the reflection that we have. So, and that is, I think, very important to be positioned like this as a manager and making sure that the people in the room reporting to you understand that. And that is probably we are back to this idea of safe space. But when you start to do that, people feel better because it's not like a game. So we must have the conversation. We have the conversation, but we already know where we'll go. But no, no, no. We have real conversation. we start with a question and really go through the question and consider all the opinions of every people in the room that might be passionate. We've seen together, or we have been sometime in rooms where it has been very passionate. But what is the satisfaction as a team member or as a manager is that after this conversation is closed, you find an agreement, and people are happy because this agreement is answering everyone, and this is the idea of um, making sure that this agreement is answering the problem we are discussing about. Um, well, yeah, I would like to speak about what is a debate. This is this question of debating, listening. You mentioned we really need to listen. I think we are probably now, I don't know if it was how it was maybe before. I think it was a bit different. But now when you start a debate, the only uh, or many people, probably politics, I'm not sure is the right example, but also sometimes in companies, the idea is as soon as you start a debate, the only thing that you want to have is to win. You want to win the debate. You don't necessarily want to know the truth. You want to win because you have the ego. You want to be there. So I think before all, a constructive debate is I have in front someone, somebody who will probably learn me something, and I'm ready to accept that there is something that I didn't know, that I didn't consider in my thoughts, that may be very important to take the decision and avoid the ego, because at the end, the idea is learning all together and being able to find an interest of what the other are saying, and being yeah, also impressed by people. You have to accept when you are a manager that some people sometimes bright more than you, or shine more than you, and it's absolutely fine.
I would go even further to say that's what you want.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, I frequently promote what I've dubbed myself the Ronald Reagan School of Management. Ronald Reagan, the former American president, was once said to have claimed that he always tried to make sure that he was the stupidest person in the room.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now you can debate whether that was right or not, but I think the idea is great. Is that if you are a proper leader, then rather than a manager, then you are going to want people in the room who know more, who are cleverer, who are better than you are, because that's the way you are going to help your team get better. But this requires you to demonstrate those traits for others to see. Humility. I'm prepared to allow someone else to listen. I am prepared to admit that you know more about this than I do. Even though I've got the title, you are better at this than me. Because that's the environment which will allow the conflict to grow, which will allow the roots of this to spread throughout all of the team for people who perhaps wouldn't normally speak to actually say, well, actually, I've got an idea and I think it might be good, or to challenge somebody else's idea. If other people see the team leader, the manager, the director, whatever, going, whoa, hang on a second, that's a better idea than mine, isn't it? I think you've got a point here. Then others will be able to hopefully see it and think, yeah, and they will say, I can do that as well. Because if the boss is happy to do it, then that's okay for me too.
Yeah, and at the end, it's a way to step by step create a positive spiral where the constructive feedback is not anymore forced. You are in front of your team and you say, "Okay, I need your opinion," and you go through all the table, all around the table, and you try to get something. No, we this kind of situation is definitely cultivated. So that's great thoughts, Paul. Let's go to the individual responsibility, because I guess again with all what you said, we have mentioned that yes, obviously there is a responsibility for the manager, but there's also a responsibility from all team members, and they need to give a try. I think they uh, they have to accept or to honor the safe space, and um, how can I say it? It's the famous sentence, the first rule of conflict club. Don't talk about conflict club. So,
It's true though,
uh,
isn't it?
yeah, exactly. So, if you have an idea, identify it, be prepared to be wrong, and be, I would say, big enough to admit it, and create also this momentum, this environment where you know that there won't be any consequences, negative, in fact, consequences if you say something wrong, because at the end, you know that all around nobody will judge you, but instead we'll see that you are trying. So that's maybe a question that I've seen that we may discuss about. Sometimes when you create a passionate discussion, even if you put the rules together, even if people are very engaged, sometimes some people would be tempted almost to attack people when they disagree, and it's not necessarily intentional, but that creates some tension, despite of the fact that it started very well. Maybe sometimes, especially in international organization as we face, maybe we can be, depending on the culture, very ironic or very blunt sometimes, and you're like, what? We are saying we are in a safe space, and you just destroy my myself with what I said. What's going on? What would be your recommendation on that, Paul?
You're right, and obviously, you and I have been in relatively recently a team where there were lots of big characters, and we frequently were involved in very passionate. Um, uh, I want to say arguments because they weren't arguments because that suggests a negativity. There were often very passionate discussions over the way forward with things, how we should do things, and what have you. But I don't think I can recall ever where it went from the professional, talking about a thing, to the personal.
Yeah.
I don't believe I ever saw anybody being attacked or even a mention of some trait of theirs which could have been used.
Hmm.
Um, and I wonder whether that's because we'd fostered an environment where we actually knew each other and liked each other outside work. So
Yeah.
we knew about each other. We knew we had that emotional connection to the individuals to know they're a good person. I like them. So why would I attack them for something? Well, I wouldn't. I might disagree with them,
Mm.
but that requires something odd, which is a willingness to discuss things out of work that normally you might not. Your views might be on politics, on religion. And I'm not meaning going into deep philosophical, well, perhaps it is going into deep philosophical, but again, in the environment of saying this is done to understand, to discuss, to appreciate, rather than to win some kind of argument. There is no argument there. But I wonder the closeness you get, the ability, the willingness as an individual to share a bit more about you, what you believe in, what you think is the right and wrongs of your own personal life, and accept others that they may live differently than you, and that's okay. You like them. That feeds into the workplace environment. And so, as a team member, then you can passionately disagree with an idea, not the person. So, when you walk out of the room or come off the meeting, you are literally just you're the same people again. You're going for a coffee, a beer, a sandwich, whatever's the next thing to do. It's not easy. Let's be honest. It's not easy. Um, because and as you just said, there's got to be this willingness within teams to give it a try, to honour the safe space, um, even if you feel that you've won. You need to not crow about it. I'm thinking of the Kipling poem about treating winning and losing essentially with the same good grace. I'm very badly paraphrasing it, so but
Hmm.
the idea is there is that whether you win or you lose, it's okay.
Mm.
Um, And that's difficult for us all to do, particularly when we become managers, because as we said earlier, the word lead is in the word leader. And so you are expected to lead, and therefore you've probably got a bigger ego as a result of it. I've not met many managers, good leaders for definite, that don't have an ego.
Yeah.
But that doesn't necessarily mean that they have to let that ego overtake them. And actually offering humility is a lesson we could all learn probably.
Yeah, I think, as you said, there are all those elements. I think I would also maybe sum up in another way. There is a question of maturity as well. You know people, you know what they eventually think. You might disagree. It is what they are. They are your colleagues. You have a good time with them outside of the work, but you understand more them when they express an idea on something at work. You know exactly what it means and you don't feel eventually offended because in another situation where you would not know the person, you would say, "Oh my gosh, that's really rude or inappropriate." You have to know the people, and I think this maturity is to really to, I would say, to read the people in front of you instead of just listening a few words. And I can also say that because my accent also is something, but it's not only the question of accent, it's more about the nuances that you may use when you speak another language than yours. So that is also what you have to consider when you work in those international environments. So that will bring us to the conclusion of this conversation. So if we make a synthesis of what we have said, we said that a constructive conflict requires at the end to be open uh, to trust each other. Friction is not fine, is necessary. And there is a need of care from people, but also the willingness of team members to be part of the process and to mature it and also to contribute to the right environment. Did I mention everything? I think we are about there
Yeah.
with all what we said. Alors, you might not know, Paul, but I try on this podcast to have a ritual question to close each episode. So I'll ask to you as well. Uh, Please answer maybe in 1 minute or not too much more. What does a truly blossoming life look like for you? To you?
Wow. That's a massive question, and I guess probably changes day to day. For me, nobody is an island. You don't just work. We have families, we have friends, we have activities we like doing. I think the aim that we all can do is at the end of every day, when we go to bed, we feel as if we've achieved something in our lives, whether it's socially, whether it's work, whether it's that's made us happier.
All right.
And if you can honestly say that, I think you probably led a blooming life.
Very nice, Paul. Thanks a lot. If anyone wants to contact you, where should they go?
I'm on LinkedIn, Paul Camage. Look me up, engage, argue. That's absolutely fine.
All
It'd be
right.
great to talk to people.
All right. So as we come to the end of this conversation, I invite you to pause. This exchange wasn't about optimizing your life, but rather an invitation to reflect on what allows human beings to truly bloom. Thank you for listening to The Art of Blooming Life. Thank you, Paul. Take care and continue to grow in your own way. Thank you.